Imagine walking into a massive throne room made entirely of living gold.
Oh, wow.
Right. The air is perfectly climate controlled. The light bending through the architecture is specifically engineered to overwhelm your senses, making you feel like you're standing in the presence of a divine being. It feels incredibly safe. It feels like a utopia. But what if that dazzling golden light is actually just a high-wattage spotlight pointed directly into your eyes?
Like designed specifically so you can't see the life force of your world being systematically drained in the dark.
Exactly.
It's a terrifying premise, but a historically resonant one. I mean, we are deeply conditioned to equate aesthetic perfection with moral goodness.
Yeah, that makes sense.
If the city is beautiful and the trains run on time, we just assume the leadership must be enlightened. But the architecture of a utopia is often just the most effective camouflage for an autocracy.
Well, welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we are exploring a sweeping, incredibly dark fantasy and sci-fi narrative excerpted from the text Ehyptian, Book 1.
It's a heavy one.
It really is. Our mission today is to unpack the mechanics of a horrifyingly efficient autocracy. We're going to look at the tragic desperation of the resistance group trying to stop it, the psychology of political complacency, and this cosmic arms race that's basically threatening to unravel their entire reality.
Right, so specifically, we are exploring the golden dynasty of Ehyptia, and it's ruled by Akhenaten, who is this charismatic, seemingly godlike tyrant.
Seemingly being the key word.
Exactly. On the surface, he has elevated his society to unprecedented heights, but beneath that golden veneer, he's secretly siphoning the world's magic.
Which is spelled M-E-J-I-C, right?
Yes, and that serves as the elemental life force and magic of this planet. Through the source text, we follow the brutal, systematic crushing of an internal resistance group called Aeroshield. We also see the willful ignorance of neighboring nations and a desperate hunt for an immortal wizard whose ancient mistake kind of set the stage for this entire crisis.
So if you're a fantasy world-building enthusiast, this text is an absolute goldmine. But even if you just find the real-world psychology of power or propaganda and political manipulation fascinating, definitely stick with us.
Oh, absolutely.
There are massive revelations in these pages about how empires actually consolidate power and, why traditional resistance often fails completely. So let's just start with the trap itself.
The city.
Yeah, the city of Ehyptia. The text describes it as living gold. It boasts an electric grid, safety, and all these technological marvels brought about by a group called Blackguard Sciences.
And context is everything here. You really have to understand what Ehyptia was before Akhenaten took over.
Right, it wasn't great.
No, not at all. The text notes that the previous ruling era, the dynasty of Enoch, was essentially a crime-ridden, chaotic collapse of society. It was incredibly dangerous and corrupt.
So people were desperate.
Completely. So when Akhenaten steps in, he doesn't just conquer. He provides a tangible, massive improvement to the standard of living. He restores the family unit, brings order. The people absolutely adore him because they feel safe for the first time in generations.
Right, but he knows that just providing basic safety isn't enough to secure permanent, unquestioning loyalty.
It never is.
To ensure people never rebel, you have to make them feel small. You need awe. Which brings us to a piece of technology in the text that I found absolutely fascinating. The wind whir.
The wind whir is just the perfect physical manifestation of Akhenaten's governing philosophy.
It really is. The text describes this massive machine built directly into the palace architecture. It's constructed of these complex pulleys and rotating arms, covered in hundreds of mirrors of varying shapes and sizes.
Catching the light.
Exactly. It catches and bends the light from the sun and the moon, funneling it through specialized shafts right into the throne room. Akhenaten used it to create these sweeping, hypnotic patterns of light and shadow.
Right, to alter the space.
Yeah. He can make the room feel like a dark, looming, infinite forest, or project this overwhelming, blindingly divine presence. To put it in modern terms, he's basically using a multi-million-dollar theater set to gaslight an entire nation into submission.
It's highly effective, but I wouldn't just reduce it to theater or like a PR spin. What's really chilling is the explicit philosophy Akhenaten outlines regarding the wind whir. He states that direct influence over the senses can propel the individual to states of higher awareness.
So he actually believes this.
He believes that by using these tools to physically overwhelm the optic nerve and the senses, he is transporting the minds of his subjects to an altered reality.
Wow.
He isn't just trying to impress them. He is actively actively bypassing their rational, critical thinking faculties to command obedience on a subconscious, almost spiritual level. It is authoritarianism masking itself as spiritual enlightenment.
That is just, it's a literal reality distortion field. You see echoes of this in our own world, honestly. Think about how massive tech campuses are designed, or the slick, sensory overload aesthetics of certain modern political campaigns.
Oh, for sure.
They use a sleek presentation and the promise of an elevated future to make you forget that you are fundamentally giving up your autonomy or your data, You're so dazzled by the interface that you don't realize you're being subjugated.
And because the Ehyptians truly believe Atenakin is guiding them to a higher state of existence, they willingly surrender that autonomy. They trust the golden aesthetic completely.
But of course, no illusion is entirely airtight.
Right. Someone always notices the cracks.
Exactly. There are always people who squint through the glare and see the machinery operating the mirrors.
Enter Aeroshield.
The Resistance.
Yeah, this is the clandestine resistance group trying to take Atenakin down. They see the reality of his tyranny. But when the illusion fails, an autocrat has to rely on brute force. And the state's enforcement mechanism in Ehyptia is absolutely ruthless. We have to talk about Tenhut. Tenhut is terrifying. He's the Lord Commander of the Black Guard, and he is the ultimate horrifying consequence of a society that prioritizes efficiency and state control over humanity.
He's a walking nightmare.
Yeah.
The text describes him as a 7-foot-tall, cyborg-like entity. He wears a wolf-like mask heavily modified with titanium black and silver railways. He has glowing neon green eyes that physically click into place, and an artificial glitching breathing apparatus.
And his weapon is just absurd.
Yes, he doesn't carry a sword, he carries a staff that vaporizes people. Not burns them, vaporizes them.
It's important to look at why Tenhut is a cyborg too. He tells Captain Momius, who is one of the Aeroshield leaders, that history and biology teach exactly one lesson: adapt or perish.
Right.
Tenhut has adapted to the reality of Atenakin's rule by literally excising his own human limitations. His empathy, his biological vulnerabilities. He has turned himself into a perfect, unfeeling instrument of the state's will.
And we see exactly what that instrument does during the ambush at Apniad early in the text. Captain Momius and his champion, a warrior named Ashenbeln, attempt to ambush what they think is the Pharaoh's carriage.
Classic rebel tactic.
Exactly. But it's a trap. Tenhut steps out instead of the Pharaoh, and it's not a battle, it is an absolute slaughter. Tenhut effortlessly deflects their attacks. He runs his staff straight through the champion's helmet.
Brutal.
And when he gets to Momius, he doesn't just execute him. He uses that staff to literally vaporize Momius's arms, leaving nothing but a ruined smoking space in the sand before finishing him off.
It's a deliberate display of disproportionate force, and it triggers a catastrophic domino effect that unravels the entire Aeroshield leadership in a matter of days.
The collapse is staggering to read. You have Admiral Grax, who tries to manipulate the naval fleet numbers, hiding 65% of the ships to build a secret resistance armada.
Good idea in theory.
Yeah. But he gets found out, arrested, and Atenakin personally mind probes him, leaving the Admiral delirious and unconscious on the throne room floor.
Then the raids start.
Right, the Black Guard raids the Resistance safe houses. Gayora, an old, powerful witch within the Resistance, is hit with some sort of dark fire magic by the Black Guard and is melted down to a blackened skeleton on the floor.
It's just devastating.
And Gulu, the seer who had been hiding them, is neutralized by Tenhut, using this strange, star-like particle field that completely suppresses her mind, turning her eyes white and causing her to collapse.
The entire operational framework of Aeroshield is dismantled almost effortlessly. But if we want to extract a deeper understanding from this text, we really have to look past the violence itself and ask why Aeroshield failed so spectacularly on a strategic level.
That is exactly what I was trying to figure out while reading this. Was Aeroshield just doomed from the jump? Because it feels like they were trying to play a traditional game of political and military chess.
Yeah.
You know, they're moving fleets around, plotting carriage ambushes, hiding in safe houses. Meanwhile, Atenakin and Tenhut are playing interdimensional 4D chess.
I wouldn't even call it chess. Chess implies that both sides are playing on the same board with the same underlying rules.
Ooh, that's a good point.
Atenakin has flipped the board entirely. Aeroshield's fatal flaw is that they misunderstood the fundamental nature of the threat. They believed power was political and military, but Atenakin recognized that true power is elemental and infrastructural.
Right. The magic
Yes. He wasn't just building an army, he was actively draining the magic, the literal life force and magical energy from the earth itself. He is a vortex drawing all etheric energies toward his throne.
Which changes the entire dynamic of the war. It means it's not just about who has more soldiers.
Exactly.
To use an analogy, it would be like a startup trying to compete with a massive tech monopoly by building better products, completely unaware that the monopoly has secretly bought up the global supply chain for silicon chips. You can't fight a war if your opponent controls the fundamental resources required to exist.
That is a perfect analogy. Gyra the Witch actually realizes this right before she dies. She explicitly states that Akhenaten is culling the very essence of magic from the world.
Wow.
Every single day that Ehyptia waits, planning their traditional naval strikes, Akhenaten physically and magically grow stronger, while the resistance and the world around them literally wither. Traditional forms of rebellion are entirely obsolete against a state that consumes the very fabric of reality to fuel itself.
Okay, so understanding that he's monopolizing the world's magic explains how he defeated the resistance so easily. But it begs a massive, terrifying question. What is he doing with all that power?
Right, you don't need all that just to sit on a throne.
Exactly. You don't drain the elemental life force of a planet just to sit on a shiny golden throne. And this brings us to the overarching sci-fi and fantasy mystery of the text The Magical Arms Race.
Exactly. The text reveals that deep beneath the palace, operating in total secrecy, is the Order of Ajati. This is a clandestine group of supreme magicists.
And it's a really diverse group, too.
It is. It includes a remarkably diverse array of beings, like a djinn named Shoz with wooden skin and glowing blue eyes, and an 8-foot-tall insectoid being named Ritu.
The visual of Ritu's mandibles clicking while he works on advanced quantum-level magic is incredible. But what are they actually building down there?
They are constructing something called the Nexus. By utilizing massive amounts of avant-garde magic, they are attempting to physically penetrate the dimensional veil.
Wait, like tearing a hole in reality?
Basically. Their goal is to harness the energy of something referred to as the Black Sun, opening a permanent window to a non-physical dimension.
And this interdimensional engineering project connects directly to their frantic, desperate search for a figure named Jeeb. Later in the text, a character named Tosh the Hunter gets some crucial backstory from a race of ratmen known as the Sphene.
The Sphene are fascinating.
Yeah. And we learned from them that Jeeves is an immortal wizard. He is the specific individual who accidentally caused the horrific Dark Age 400 cycles ago, which left a massive region of the world called Sen Hell, blanketed in impenetrable darkness and filled with monsters.
And the tragedy of Jeeves is profound. He didn't cause the Dark Age because he was a megalomaniac craving power. His mistake was born of pure, crushing exhaustion.
Right, he was immortal and couldn't stand it anymore. He was trapped in this endless, isolated existence. So he attempted a highly complex ritual to disassemble his own body on a molecular level. He just wanted to stop existing.
But the mechanics of magic in this universe are deeply tied to psychological state. Because Jubib was consumed by intense fear and inner turmoil during the disassembly ritual, that volatile negative energy projected outward into the fabric of reality.
Oh, man.
The ritual failed to destroy him, but it succeeded in ripping open dimensional portals, letting unspeakable horrors loose upon the world.
It's such a brilliant concept. It's like a deeply burned out software engineer who just wants to delete their own source code to get out of the system.
Yeah.
But because their hands are shaking while they type, they mess up the syntax and accidentally unleash a reality-breaking virus that crashes the entire global mainframe.
A very apt comparison. The fallout of that virus is still felt 400 cycles later. The region of Senhel remains a dark, monster-infested wasteland, and Akhenatken's public relations spin his justification for building the Nexus and draining the world's Megitus is that he needs the power of the Black Sun to cleanse Senhel and restore the world.
Oh, of course. I'm just fixing the giant dark spot on the map. Don't worry about the massive interdimensional portal I'm building.
Exactly.
It sounds incredibly noble. But knowing Akhenaten, that cannot be the whole truth.
It isn't. The text heavily implies his endgame goes far beyond environmental restoration. Akhenaten explicitly tells Tenhut that he desires to transcend the physical medium entirely.
Transcending the medium.
Yeah.
Wow.
He doesn't just want to be the emperor of Ehyptia, or even rule the planet. He wants to enter the fabric of the next dimension. He is attempting to ascend to literal godhood, using the life force of his current world as the rocket fuel to get there.
He's building an interdimensional superweapon disguised as a public works project. Which leads to the next logical question. How is the rest of the world reacting?
You'd think they'd be panicking.
Right. If your neighbor is draining the planet's energy to build a reality-ending portal, you would assume the surrounding nations would be forming an immediate coalition to stop him. But instead, we see total political paralysis, specifically in the neighboring nation of Agria.
Agria provides a vital, frustratingly realistic look at the danger of complacency in the face of tyranny. The text presents a stark contrast between two leaders within Agria. On one side, you have Archmage Salentai of the Holy College. Salentai possesses the analytical foresight to see exactly what Atsinatkin is doing. He understands that the Pharaoh is amassing power that won't stop at the borders of Senhel.
Salentai is looking at the data and realizing they are all facing an existential threat. And he takes this directly to his ruler, Emperor Julay of Agria. And Emperor Julay's response is, well, it's actively hostile to the truth.
Julay's behavior is a masterclass in the psychology of appeasement and willful ignorance. He has convinced himself that as long as Ehyptia is focusing its military and magical resources on fighting the monsters in the dark region of Senhel, Agria is perfectly safe.
Right, he views Etanet's growing empire as a convenient buffer state.
Exactly.
It's infuriating to read. Julay is literally sitting in his throne room, drinking wine, throwing goblets at the wall in a temper tantrum, and actively threatening to burn down Salentai's holy college if the Archmage attempts to intervene in Ehyptia's affairs.
Yeah, he tells him, as long as Senhel remains at our doorstep, this is the only concern you shall carry.
He is so terrified of the immediate visible threat of the monsters that he's entirely willing to let a tyrant become an interdimensional god, just so long as he doesn't have to deal with it today.
And Atinatkin's regime knows exactly how to exploit this kind of cowardly diplomacy. While Julay is hiding in his palace, Atinatkin sends his champion, Skarj, to secure alliances with other powerful factions.
Like the Riven, right?
Yes, the feline race known as the Riven and their queen Syria. And Skarj doesn't need to use the Blackguard or advanced Mijek to subjugate them. He secures her cooperation with simple bribes, shiny golden gifts from the Ehyptian throne.
It highlights the dual nature of Atinatkin's manipulation. He uses hyper-advanced, brutal magic on his internal enemies and shiny trinkets on his complacent neighbors.
But I want to linger on Emperor Julay for a second.
Okay.
Watching the resistance fighters of Arrow Shield get vaporized is tragic. But there is something about Julay's inaction that almost feels more deeply frustrating than Atinatkin's actual villainy. It gets under your skin. Why is that?
Because Julay's inaction is deeply uncomfortably relatable. It represents a historical reality that repeats endlessly the conscious decision to ignore a growing systemic threat because addressing it is too difficult or requires too much sacrifice in the short term. Yeah, that's spot on.
Julay hopes that by keeping his head down, the predator will simply eat him last. The terrifying truth of this text is that Atinatkin's autocracy thrives not just because of his own dark magic or his cyborg enforcers. It thrives because of the external complacency of leaders like Julay.
Leaders who are too comfortable in their wine-soaked throne rooms to recognize that the fire next door will eventually consume their own house.
Precisely.
The brilliant articulation of how empires actually consume the world. Arrow Shield fought valiantly, but they were isolated and fighting the wrong kind of war. If Agria and the Riven had backed them, the math might have changed.
Oh, completely.
But because everyone stayed in their own lane, protecting their own short-term interests, the Golden Dynasty just kept expanding.
The text elegantly illustrates that divided traditional resistance is easily crushed by a singular, focused power that is willing to rewrite the rules of reality. Atinatkin has a vision, his multiversal endgame. The rest of the world is fractured, arguing over borders or hiding from the dark.
Let's bring all these threads together. What we are looking at in Atinatkin, Book or isn't just an imaginative story about magical staffs, cyborgs, and ratmen. It is a brilliantly layered systemic exploration of how tyranny operates at peak efficiency. Tyrants weaponize technological aesthetics, like the light-bending wind war, to manufacture consent and make the populace fall in love with their own subjugation.
They utilize overwhelming, chillingly disproportionate force embodied by Tenhut to crush internal dissent so swiftly and completely that rebellion seems mathematically impossible. And crucially, they monopolize the underlying infrastructure of the world, fighting wars of elemental attrition rather than political skirmishes.
And they rely, perhaps most of all, on the cowardice of bystanders. The Emperor Julies of the world, who watch the water boiling around them and simply turn up the air conditioning.
That's a great way to put it.
It really is a masterclass in the anatomy of an empire's rise. And as we wrap up, I want to leave you with one final, incredibly chilling scene from the very end of the source text provided. We talked at the beginning about that golden aesthetic, the blinding spotlight hiding the truth of the autocracy.
The engineered illusion of the Golden King.
Right. At the very end of the excerpt, Tosh the hunter returns to the palace to report to Atenatkin. And for just a split second, Tosh experiences a terrifying psychic slip. The engineered golden aura surrounding the pharaoh completely drops.
The reality distortion field fails just for a moment.
Yes, the colors in the throne room instantly invert to dead shades of gray. The air itself feels empty, and the pharaoh is revealed not as a glowing, godlike savior, but as a hollow, pale, parasitic entity.
It's such a striking image.
His teeth are blackened fangs. And the text describes his eyes as revealing not just an absence of emotion, but an absence of absence, a deep void where nothing dwelt.
It is the parasite finally revealed without its camouflage, the true face of the entity that is quietly draining the lifeblood of the world.
And then in a flash, the light returns, the gold shines brilliantly again, and everyone in the room goes back to worshiping him, completely unaware. So as we end this deep dive, I want to offer a thought that builds on Tosh's horrifying realization.
Okay.
In our own world, we are increasingly enveloped in our own digital wind wars. Algorithmic realities, deepfakes, and seamless digital aesthetics designed to keep us endlessly scrolling and profoundly compliant.
That's entirely true.
As our own reality becomes increasingly filtered through these engineered golden interfaces, will we even possess the capacity to notice when our own parasite takes the throne? Or will we just be grateful for how shiny the cage looks?
A profound and unsettling question to leave us with.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Keep questioning the golden light, and we'll see you next time.